SDG 1 is to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. Within SDG 1 are 7 targets, of which this video will focus on Target 1A, which is ensure significant mobilization of resources from a variety of sources, including through enhanced development cooperation, in order to provide adequate and predictable means for developing countries, in particular least developed countries, to implement programs and policies to end poverty in all its dimensions. Target 1A is the first example of a target designated by letters rather than the previous targets' designation by numbers, for example 1.1 and 1.2. For all the SDGs, number-designated targets measure outcomes, whereas letter-designated targets represent means of implementation. To measure Target 1A, there are 2 indicators. Indicator 1.A.1 is total official development assistance grants from all donors that focus on poverty reduction as a share of the recipient country's gross national income. Indicator 1.A.2 is proportion of total government spending on essential services, education, health, and social protection. Indicator 1.A.1 focuses upon the concept of official development assistance, or ODA, synonymous with international aid. The aim of development aid is to improve the economic and social development of humans living in countries which have not yet fully industrialized and are therefore considered developing in the parlance of the field of international development. The degree to which a country is developing is often defined by a country's score in the Human Development Index, a composite measure of life expectancy, education, and per capita income. Separate, though entwined, to development aid is humanitarian aid, more synonymous with logistical assistance in the face of disaster or conflict. ODA is a concept defined in 1969 by the Development Assistance Committee of the OECD, or Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. The OECD, headquartered in Paris, France, is an international organization of 38 member states, predominantly developed countries, with a focus on economic policies. The Development Assistance Committee, or DAC, consists of 30 OECD members, constituting the largest aid donors, as a forum to discuss aid and poverty reduction efforts. The predominant means of measuring donor amounts is as a percentage of the donor country's gross national income, or GNI, otherwise known as Gross National Product, or GNP. Gross national income is very similar to the concept of GDP, but by contrast, GNI includes the economic output of foreign residents of the country. The OECD DAC has an official list of ODA recipients, all the developing countries and territories eligible to receive ODA. Included are dollar flows made via so-called multilateral institutions such as the World Bank or International Monetary Fund. To be counted as ODA, donor flows must come from government agencies with the aim of economic development and welfare of developing countries and must be concessional, that is, either outright grants with no obligation to be repaid or loans with much more generous repayment terms than loans available commercially in the market. The sectors counted toward poverty reduction for the purposes of Indicator 1.A.1 include food aid, basic health, education, water and sanitation, population programs, and reproductive health. Indicator 1.A.2 is defined as the total expenditure on all levels of education, health, and social protection from all levels of government as percentage of overall government expenditure. The rationale of Indicator 1.A.2 is to evaluate the priority given to each government's focus on improving well-being via public expenditure on education, health, and social protection in comparison to other sectors. As the Millennium Development Goals drew to a close in 2015, with it did UNESCO's Education for All campaign. Subsequently, at the 2015 UN World Education Forum in Incheon, Korea, the Education Framework for Action was adopted to ensure SDG 4 is met by 2030. Relevant to Indicator 1.A.2 was the Education 2030 Framework for Action's recommendation of 15 to 20% of public expenditure spent on education. However, between 2015 and 2018, only 30% of countries had spent the recommended 15 to 20% of expenditure on education. Furthermore, ODA grants intended for poverty reduction toward basic social services and food aid presented only 0.02% of gross national income of the donor countries of the OECD's Development Assistance Committee in 2019.